and
Ah,
very
oh,
hard. Anyway,
Everyone should be in now.
okay, fantastic. Okay, thank you. Okay, good evening. I'm calling this public meeting to order in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGLC 131, Section 40 in the Boston Wetlands Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances 7-1.4. The Boston Conservation Commission will hold a virtual public hearing this evening on October 18th, 2023, to review the following projects to determine what conditions, if any, the commission will impose in order to protect the interests of the public and private water supply, groundwater, prevention of pollution, flood control, prevention of storm damage, protection of fisheries and land containing shellfish, and protection of wildlife habitat. This evening, we'll be holding this public hearing, which will be followed by our regular meeting. Also, in accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, we are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Conservation Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Additionally, the meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your video. Members of the public may have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov or via Twitter by tagging the Twitter handle @BostonEnviro and using the hashtag ConComHearing. For the record, I am Michael Parker, Chair of the Commission. I'll now ask staff to identify themselves.
Elena Idamani with the Environment Department.
Christopher Edwards with the Environment Department.
Didi Hernandez with the Environment Department.
Great, thank you. Now I'll call the roll of commissioners who are present. Commissioner Long.
Nick Long.
Commissioner Richmond.
Alice Richmond.
Commissioner Herbst.
Ann Herbst.
Okay, we're ready to go. First item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061958 and Boston file number 2023-048 from BSC Group, Inc. on behalf of the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation for the proposed construction of a multi-use trail and amenities along the Neponset River and Edgewater Drive between Osceola Street and Kennedy Playground located in Hyde Park and Mattapan. Resource areas are bordering land subject to flooding, 25-foot riverfront area, 25-foot waterfront area, and 100-foot buffered bank. This has been continued from the October 4th, 2023 hearing. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Hi, this is Diana Walden from BSC Group, and I know Stella Lensing from DCR is also here.
Great.
Good evening.
And Ricardo Ostrich with BSC Group.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, I believe where we left it off last time is a couple of issues that we asked questions about. One of them being the removal of the trees that Commissioner Herbst was interested in. And also we're going back and forth on a report on how well the new vegetation and trees are doing. Is there anything else?
No, we do have a little bit more information on. We took the request to go back and look at each tree, see where there may be the healthy invasives or possibly the healthy natives, see why they were being removed if they were not in that first 20-foot zone, with the path and shoulders and construction swath. And so we do have a little bit more information if you'd like us to go through there. We were able to save 10 additional trees from the removal number, and of that 10, 7 were the healthy natives out of, I believe, the 9 that were in the zone beyond the 20-foot zone. So I don't know if you mind going forward a slide or at least one slide to see. Okay, so this is the supplemental slide deck that we provided, and this is just taking that count that we had. Assigning at BSC Group went through and recounted. Several trees were reclassified to a dead or poor condition from the healthy but invasive number. We also recounted to 25 healthy but invasives once a few were moved to the poor category, and we were also able to save 3 of those. And then in the 9 total healthy native trees that were going to be removed, we saved 7, knocking that number down to 2 in that beyond the 20-foot zone. And if we want to go forward a slide, please. And so then we also went back, and I remember one of the commissioner's questions had been, how many are we actually preserving? And from the plans shown, there were some that had tree protection, and then some additional trees you could see kind of a grayer shade, and it didn't look like many trees were being preserved based on that. But we went back to an original assessment which looked at trees across the entire parcel, and they had counted a little over 600 trees that were 4 dBH or greater. And the survey, the grayer outline of those trees on the plans, actually only surveyed, I believe, trees that are 10 or 12-inch dBH. So it did not reflect all the trees that are out there. Our more detailed survey was the Bartlett Tree Assessment Report included with the Notice of Intent, and that only looked at the 30-foot work zone and project limits. And in that case, we had 311 6-inch dBH trees, which the locations were shown on those demo plans, and we can look forward to that in a minute. But so this new count has 215 trees greater than 6 inches to be removed. And as noted, we had 115 trees to be planted, so a net loss of about 100 trees in the greater than 6-inch dBH category. And then many of those healthy invasives that are going to be lost are because they are in that fitness area, and other losses due to grading and spots where the wall openings are occurring. And we want to note that the invasives tend to grow communally, and so there tends to be a higher loss or a higher count in one particular area. So if you're hitting an area that has invasives because of the way they grow, multi-trunks are included in that removal. If you scroll forward a bit more, please. We also wanted to look at the both of the tree assessments, the one that did the full parcel, 600 trees, and the work zone. And in both cases, the top few species, a big percentage of them are black locust, Norway maples. When they looked at the full assessment, red maple came out as the most common tree because it is counting down towards the river and out of the work zone. And in the work zone, the top two species are invasive species. And then if you scroll forward a bit, please. And actually just one more. So we looked at those demo plans again, tree removals, and we identified the 10, there's several sheets of the project, but anything that is in a pink circle without a call out is a healthy invasive tree that is beyond 20 feet and is slated for removal. And any the blue circles represent the healthy native trees beyond that 20-foot swath. And if you don't mind, just kind of scrolling forward through the next few slides to demonstrate where those trees, if they weren't, if they weren't called out, then they are still slated for removal. But you can see where, if you just go back one more, please. So you can see where a lot of the ones slated for removal are up near the wall and in that fitness area. So that's, just basically an additional look at all the trees as requested and to see why they're being removed. And then just an assessment of what's out there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Diana. Commissioner Herbst, I'll let you handle this. You're muted.
I actually will defer to Nick for an initial reaction, if that's all right, and then go from there.
Nick,
If
back
he
to
has
you.
questions or comments on that.
I appreciate the team going back and taking a look at, which trees might be able to be saved based on, the commission's comments. I think, we like seeing that. Additionally, kind of the breakdown of what's healthy and what's native versus invasive kind of makes sense. I guess, maybe not so much a follow-up question, but a caution that may not be needed for folks who are knowledgeable on the team, but a caution that, without the follow-up invasive treatment, there may be concern of, you know, these communal kind of groves growing again, but I know that may not be the worst thing. But that's pretty much my initial reaction. If we could go back to Commissioner Herbst.
Okay, I'm trying to follow up a little bit on the question about the number existing and the number removed for a commissioner who's not here tonight. And it looks to me like you're basically saying there's 600 trees, 200 being removed, 100 being planted. Is that am I roughly getting that right?
Yes, there
Um,
may be some additional ones that fall in a 4 to 6 inch category that we don't necessarily have tracked by the Bartlett tree removal or the Bartlett tree assessment, because they looked at 6 inches and greater, and the 600 number includes some of the 4-inch trees. But generally, yes, there are 215 trees greater than 6 inches being removed and 115 trees being replanted.
Okay. And
And then,
go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, like, if we want to go back maybe one or two slides. That's a great one, actually. So where you can see those kind of the gray tree symbols, the fainter gray tree symbols beyond the limits of work, that area doesn't represent all the trees in that zone, just because the survey there did not pick up anything smaller than, say, 10 or 12 inches. So there's a large number of trees in the 4-inch to 10 or 12-inch range that are in those zones that aren't shown. And we just wanted to point that out, that it's not just the few trees that you see on there being the only trees out there, that there's trees that are smaller that are not typically picked up by survey outside of the project limits.
Okay. And I ultimately think I'm not hearing Commissioner Long have basic questions, but typically we often have a 1-to-1 or more than 1-to-1 replacement, and that's clearly not what you're proposing. So I just want to understand, is it just a question of the space available or?
That's correct, Commissioner. I mean, because if you think about the location of our trail, that would basically displace the net loss of the 100 trees.
Okay. I don't have further questions.
Okay, so just so I understand that, Stella, what you're saying is that the displacement of those 100 trees is area that's taken up by the trail?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the other issue was we went back and forth a bit about the reporting of how well the new plantings are doing. And I think, Stella, you had suggested that there's a warranty, and I think it was for 1 season, or it was 1 year that might include 2 growing seasons. And I think where we left it off is that wasn't, and we weren't satisfied with that. Were you able to come up with another plan there?
Yes, so I think what we like to do in addition, of course, is to have the warranty, is to have an intense maintenance period by the contractor of the installation. And we like to include in our construction contract, there will be 2 growing seasons. So in other words, if installation occurs, this fall, then, for example, in the fall, then they would perform some maintenance, then there'd be a gap in, of course, it's not growing season, then they'd come back in the spring and summer next year and do maintenance. In other words, watering, making sure that vegetation stays alive, do weed removal, etc. And then that would be 1 growing season until the fall. And then we potentially follow up with another growing season. So you might actually get, 2 calendar years of intense maintenance out of that. And then we can only really look forward to 1 year of warranty after that. But in a way, we make this maintenance a pay item in our contract. So in other words, they get paid for that weed removal and watering. That way, the contractor is not going to take their chances and say, we're not going to do the watering because it's included in the planting cost, and then just come back and replace, and then, you know, we're left with no further maintenance. So this is how we are trying to structure our contracts, to pay additional, but to have the maintenance built into the contract by the contractor. And that way we get some establishment.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Thank you for thinking outside the box a little bit there. And as far as what gets generated there, when the contractor comes back, does the contractor give you a report as to the activities that they're performing?
So in order to get paid, they would have to provide a log of the time that they came on site, watered the vegetation, and ideally this all happens during the life of the construction contract. So they have to check in with our resident engineer, excuse me, provide a lot, say, you know, I'm going to be there on this date. We're watering, excuse me, all the trees. We can either decide we pay by the hour or by the gallon or by visit. We still have to figure that out, but there's tracking of this. And then also what we ask contractors, if there's rain in the forecast, then, you know, we don't want them to come and water if there's sufficient rain in the forecast, but they have to let us know that because of the rain there won't be. So that all gets tracked, because we have to pay them for those items, and they have to submit receipts or proof that they've done the work.
Okay, so is the log, I guess what I'm getting at is the log seems like something that could be sent in to Elena. Correct?
I guess we could do that.
Okay. I'll go to Commissioner Long. You raised this issue. How does that all sound to you?
It is all making sense. One follow-up question I had, just so I'm clear, is the warranty period, does that extend after the contracted maintenance period?
I would imagine it does, because you know, they're doing all this maintenance, and then, you know, there's a warranty period after that.
Got it. So sort of, I guess theoretically, that would be almost like not exactly a warranty period of more than a year, but, you know, people will be keeping a close eye on things for more than a year.
Correct. I mean, I will be honest, the only drawback that with this, and this is why we like to make these pay items, the only drawback is, you know, once they've replaced items that didn't survive and contracts are closed out, it's really difficult in general to have them come back and do a second replacement. So this is why we really want to push up front for this maintenance and taking care of the vegetation during this maintenance period before the contract comes to an end. Yeah, it's very difficult, you know, to keep a subcontractor to a general contractor, you know, to come back and do things once the contract is legally ended. So, you know, we're trying at DCR, at least across the board, we're looking at this in terms of our landscapes.
Yeah, understandable. Having been in similar situations with you know, restoration and planting projects, that is, you know, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and, you know,
Right.
all the difficulties that come along with that. And I guess sort of along with Chair Parker's questions about the logs for the maintenance, I know that, you know, for the warranty after that maintenance period, you know, there will have to be a count. So would the inventory that's done by either DCR staff or a contractor, would that warranty kind of inventory be able to be shared with the commission as well?
I mean, usually that's a site visit with punch lists, and we review, you know, how many species made it, how many did not. Sometimes there's also acknowledgement. We have had situations where the was just not the right spot for a plant, and we have to pivot and maybe rethink something else. And for example, if a shrub didn't make it, it might be a better location for a ground cover or something else. So sometimes that happens, but we usually have records of that, and we would usually have to pay the contractor to, you know, replace things if it just was at no fault of them. You know, just the wrong plant, wrong spot. You can't always guarantee that you've always made the correct decision. So, but yes, generally that is tracked as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, I know it's you can't get everything right on the first try oftentimes. In previous projects, I think if plantings have failed in a certain area, you know, like you said, ground cover or seeding might be applied, perhaps rather than a 1-for-1 replacement.
Correct.
That may be after the maintenance or period. But yeah, I think we would be interested in seeing those warranty kind of inventory logs, because, you know, if anything else, I think it would be instructive to see what functions well or what establishes well along the stretch of the river, because there are a lot of areas like this in Boston, some of which I work in myself. So I think that would be instructive for the commission to look at.
Okay.
Great. Anything else, Commissioner Long?
No, thank you, Chair Parker.
Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, I want to go back to the last set of questions. I think that somebody said in response to a question from the chair that the trees that were coming out were all in the areas that were going to be trails. I thought I understood the last time that some substantial number of trees are coming out from areas that have been designated for fitness or some other function. Did I misunderstand that?
And I apologize, because when I said the trail, I meant to encompass the entire project, but you are correct that when I spoke about the trail, I'm including the fitness area and the areas where the walls is being modified or opened up, and where we are regrading to be able to make trail connections. So yes, you are correct. It's not only the actual trail, but the project in entirely. In other words, the amenities are displacing those trees.
So, and again, if I remember what you said at the last hearing, you said that there had been some kind of a public process, and that the people in that area had indicated that they really wanted these functions like the fitness area. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, the problem I'm having is I went back and reread what Mayor Wu had said about trees and in Boston, and I'm still you know, I appreciate everything that you guys have come back with and the work that it represents. But, you know, to have a sort of a negative 100 trees, you know, at this point in Boston, given all of the stuff that has been said by Mayor Wu and others, is still causing me some problems. So I guess the question is, you know, as far as you guys are concerned, what this revised presentation is the absolute bare minimum, can't go any further, of trees that must be taken out in order to do this project. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, if we, you know, I think the only way the 100 trees would stay is if we didn't pave a trail and didn't add fitness equipment and didn't put the wall openings in other words, did not build the project out.
But I guess the question is, that is there funding now to do all of this work at once?
Yes.
And so that if you didn't take the trees out now, these 100 trees, you wouldn't be able to do the project as described. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I also think we need to just point out that not all 100 of them are healthy native trees. There are trees in poor and fair condition that are native, and there are trees in poor and fair condition that are also non-native included in these trees that are coming out. So yes, I mean, we do, again, we are removing 215 and replanting 115.
So is there a way to assure yourselves and therefore us that all the trees being taken out are not healthy?
Yes, we have that table that shows which trees are in poor and fair condition. So in other words, not good condition. The trees that are in decline for various reasons, etc. We have tried to locate our trail and our amenities in areas where we are minimizing impact to healthy, robust native trees as far as possible.
But with respect to the non-native trees, or what I guess we're calling, or is called the invasive trees, those you're not making a determination as to what's healthy and what isn't. Those are just all coming out.
No, that's not true. There are some that are probably not in fantastic condition. I wonder if we can go back to the table.
Yeah, I was just looking back, and if we counted up all the removal trees that are considered healthy but invasive, or healthy and native, it's about 122 trees that are being removed in that good condition. Trees that are being removed is about 122. So if we looked at that versus what's being replanted, we are almost at a net an equilibrium almost. Actually, if you want to go back, let's see, 3 more slides, please.
The ones that you're going to plant, and maybe you've already said this, and I don't remember it. How big are those trees? I mean, you're taking down some really big trees, and you're replacing them with some not such big trees. And I presume that the reason for that is financial, at least partially financial, that it's just a lot less expensive to get smaller trees and hope that they make it and grow. But, you know, of the trees that you're taking out, do you, maybe that's what I'm looking at now. No, this is this isn't it. Do you know how many of them are really, you know, for lack of a better phrase, big trees?
I beg your pardon. I think we definitely can take a look at that, but I just want to make a note about when we plant new trees, we do tend to plant trees that are 2 to 2.5 inch caliper, because they have a better chance of acclimatizing to their new location. Doesn't matter what, if you go with a bigger tree with a bigger caliper inch, they still have, when you get a tree with a 4 to 5 inch caliper, their ratio of root ball diameter to trunk diameter is a lot smaller. So they actually cut the root ball smaller than it really has to be, what it should be, which should be 10 to 12 times bigger than the trunk diameter. And so that is why your attrition rate for new trees that have a larger size is a lot more than for smaller trees at 2 to 2.5 inch caliper, because their root ball diameter is more in ratio with their trunk diameter. The other thing that we also like to source is bare root trees as opposed to balled and burlap trees, is because they also, again, have less chance of having girdled root systems, which causes a tree to have a slow death of suffocation. So bare root tree planting is usually small, and container grown trees also come in smaller sizes, but their survival rate is much stronger. So we do this not only for financial reasons, but because we believe the trees are better able to adapt to their new locations and they are healthier to begin with.
So that is, I appreciate that. I have no reason to doubt as a matter of science or fact, anything you've said. But in fact, you know, those trees, the new trees, you know, need water. They need to be watered, at least for some period of time after they're planted. And so, you know, I guess I mean, I don't want to take up any more time because I know we have other things to talk about, and you guys have done, I think, a wonderful job kind of coming back to us. But I'm still having trouble with the difference between what's there and what will be there when you're finished. And you know, and taking out of healthy trees. So I mean, you know, I'm not sure that I'm going to get where I need to get to feel really positive about this project, but I do understand what you've said, and I appreciate the work that you guys have put in to make this presentation.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Richmond. One thing I'll point out with the local ordinance, we are dealing with a waterfront area, and one of the values we do look for in waterfront areas is retaining access for the public to be able to visit those areas. And so I think we're looking at a project that is trying to strike a balance between, you know, I'm not happy. I don't think any of the commissioners, and probably Stella yourself, you're probably not
Right.
happy that so many trees are coming down. But there is a concept here for, you know, opening up this area for increased public access. Commissioner Herbst, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to make another comment, especially since I've had a lot of concerns about this. I want to acknowledge that you are coming close to a balance and that the overall mix will be more healthy and more native because of what you're removing and what you're putting in. And I think that is worth noting and is helpful to me, might be helpful to Commissioner Richmond.
Great, thank you. Okay, so with that, I think we have one other thing to discuss, Stella, and that is the order of conditions.
That's
and
correct.
We've gone back and forth quite a bit, and I know that Ellen, well, I shouldn't say we. Ellen and you have gone back and forth. I know that some changes have been made. I have to say with the remaining issues, and I'm going to give you an option at the end here, but with the remaining issues, the perpetual maintenance conditions or the perpetual conditions that are in this particular order of conditions, you know, if Commissioner Sullivan was here, he would say we don't like to let go of those conditions. The other thing is with other DCR projects, we know that those conditions have been accepted. So there does seem to be some internal inconsistency there. I'll just go down the list real quickly here and hopefully I get them all from memory. You had some conditions, one condition where you talked about or you suggested that stormwater be diverted to catch basins that were certified or BWSC compliant. And when I looked at that, it occurred to me that that condition would promote non-compliance. So in other words, you know, what that condition says is if we have 4 catch basins, one is BWSC compliant and the other 3 are not, we don't have to divert stormwater to those non-compliant catch basins, which, you know, is someone more cynical or trickier than you, not trickier, but with ulterior motives other than you, Stella, would then let their catch basins fall into non-compliance, then they wouldn't have any obligations to manage stormwater. So I think, you know, we clearly wanted to reject that one. There are a few others where you tied the compliance to the NPDES permits. And that's another area where, you know, 2 things. One is, you know, we have our own standards, performance standards. Also, for staff to be able to, you know, properly monitor if you're in compliance with NIPD's standards. We're not, experts at what the particular NIPD's permits are. They change every 5 years. So we would not be putting those into the order of conditions as well. So with that being said, I'll give you a chance to respond, and then I'll give you the options that I was thinking about.
Right, so I think I first want to respond with the Boston Water and Sewer compliant catch basins. I think that the distinction that we had internally, our discussion was purely thinking about, when you are looking at catch basins that are not within city limits, but within the Commonwealth property area, with regards to those are, we're not in compliance with Boston Water and we're not tying into Boston Water and Sewer catch basins at that point, and we're I think that there's a misunderstanding that we're not going to have the same high standards. So I think that the internal discussion was, well, if we have our own catch basins standards, but we're not tying into Boston Water and Sewer a system or catch basins, we were wondering why that standard would be imposed upon DCR's catch basin standard. I guess that was the question.
Yep.
And I understand what you're saying. We need to uphold standards and make sure things function correctly. So, I understand your point. And then with regards to the NIPD's MS4 permit, that also came from our stormwater section at DCR, where we have this permit and we are in compliance, and we are reviewing and operating our stormwater systems, best management practices, and we're in compliance with those permits, and we're doing cleanups according to those permits, etc., and monitoring water quality and making sure there's pre-treatment in accordance with those permits that we already have. And the issue is, again, that we're managing all these systems across the Commonwealth, and then to have to sort of have special conditions for different properties across the Commonwealth makes it really difficult for us. And I think there's a question that perhaps we are not then be able to uphold that order of condition and then therefore be out of compliance. So we're saying, can you recognize that we have the MS4 permit where we're already taking care of these things?
Sure. No, understood. And frankly, any major project that comes in front of us has either one or two NIPD's permits, and we just don't make that distinction in the order of conditions. So I understand what you're saying, but the other not unfortunate. The other thing here is, you do operate across the Commonwealth. Many municipalities have their own local wetlands ordinance. So there are differing standards. I sympathize with that, but unfortunately, you're within our jurisdiction, just like you would be in the jurisdiction of Westford if they have a local ordinance. And so we have our performance standards. So I think it would be setting a bad precedent for us to carve that out. So that being said, where we are now is, I think, I'll be asking for a motion to close the hearing. There's an option here of waiting 2 weeks to issue the order of conditions. We can vote on the order of conditions in 2 weeks if you think there's any chance that they're going to change. I don't know what other arguments you can bring forth that would be compelling enough for us to want to change the order of conditions, or we could issue the order of conditions tonight along with closing the hearing. And if you and others at DCR are so dissatisfied with them, then you could appeal. I'm not sure what else to do at this point, so I just want to be very transparent and give you some options.
Right. I really appreciate that. And I would say, I the final decisions in some of those internal discussions and proposals that were made about the red lines for the orders that do not lie solely with me. So it would be irresponsible for me to make a decision on behalf of everybody at the DCR. And
Sure.
I will need to bring, those back. So I would say if we can go with the option of closing the hearing and then issuing the order in 2 weeks' time, that would be really helpful because it will give me a chance to again bring this back to senior staff at DCR and make sure that they are on board and okay with every single condition, because I would hate for us to have to come back and either ask for an amendment or anything else.
Okay, and there's not even a little bit of you inside that wants to go rogue?
I want to go rogue so bad, but I'm telling you. Again, I'm not the big decision maker, so.
Okay, with that, Elida, do we have any raised hands?
No, I am not seeing any raised hands. And I also don't see anything in the box.
Okay, fantastic. I'll make one other note. Ricardo, I think I was on a call with you for about 3 or 4 hours this morning. You've had a long day. You're on the zoning commission, aren't you?
I am on the zoning commission. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to close this hearing.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond.
I have a question. If we need 4 votes, is that right?
No, I believe when we have a quorum, we need a majority. We need 3 votes.
Okay, I'm gonna vote no.
Okay, Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye, so that carries 3-1. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061888 and Boston file number 2022-043 from Goddard Consulting LLC on behalf of 335 Chelsea NT LLC for the proposed demolition of an existing multifamily house and construction of a 4-story apartment building located at 335 Chelsea Street in East Boston. The resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. Who's here on behalf of the applicant? Mark, I think that's you and you're muted.
Oh, my apologies. Thought I did that. My name is Mark Garland with Goddard Consulting here on behalf of the applicant.
Okay, floor is all yours.
Great. So we could just go to the first slide. This is a fairly can we go to the next slide? It'll actually be better. So this why is I'm not sure why this wasn't the quality that I saw when I exported it. Is Elena, is that stretched for some reason? The image seems to be compressed.
Let me see. Sometimes the formatting gets a little bit interesting when we're let's see.
It's not how it resolved on my screen.
Oh, strange.
Well, while that happens, so this, just to give context, so this is a very dense apartment neighborhood on Chelsea Street. Basically, side to side is apartment buildings, and back is also apartment buildings. So you have a 2-story residential structure that's an apartment building with a small backyard in the rear. And so from a context standpoint, resource wise, again, we're only in land subject to storm coastal flowage, deep in a neighborhood, basically right on the edge of it, actually across the street. It actually gets out of the floodplain itself. So we basically flood from the back from the property to the front. So I'm not sure if some of the commission may remember, there were notices of intent for properties adjacent just up the street of this property doing a very similar thing, which was a tear down rebuild of an older apartment building. So hopefully, I'm not sure if we can get this screen resolved, because it showed up. That one looks better.
Yep,
That's,
okay. Yep.
that's the proposed. So this is a full sheet. So basically, we're basically expanding the building slightly in the back, extending it. to just add some more flooring space, and then it's 4 stories versus a 2-story building. We have a sign off by the Boston Water and Sewer Commission already. So that has all been taken care of in regards to the stormwater requirements that they have in regards to the roof capture and infiltration into the ground. This plan shows everything is a little busy. If the next slide should be a close-up, I'm hoping that came through. There we go. It's a little better. It's still very grainy. I don't know why that showed up in my PowerPoint. Here it looks fine. So there's a stormwater infiltration system up front. That's the gray, 2 gray boxes that are in the front left part of the building there. And then the back of the build, basically you have the hatch around the perimeter is the perimeter building footprint. The back area where you see the linear vertical lines, that's a back deck and porch area. Patio basically on the surface, and then decks above for the other stories. Typical utility lines to the street. That's about it. It's there's no existing little vegetation. It's basically just a typical back lawn area. There's no trees or anything that are coming down in that back area. And so it's just basically a typical rebuild of an existing apartment complex building with a little bit larger space on there. Again, all land subject to coastal flowage, and that's the only resource area there. So my apologies that these didn't render out cleaner than I thought they were going to. But that's the project in a nutshell. We do have a DP file number 61888. So that's been taken care of, and there were no comments from DP.
Okay. Big question I have is you are increasing impervious surfaces here. So what are you going to be doing to mitigate that as far as things like, I don't know, vegetated roof deck, rain gardens, landscaping, vegetation, street trees? Have you thought about that?
So this is a very tight neighborhood in regards to sidewalk space, is extremely tight. We don't have a nice kind of setback neighborhood where you have the ability to put trees along the front of your property or even really on the street itself. The backyard is a very small area in regards to its usage. It's basically just, it's got some, I think it has some raised garden beds, and that's about it back there. We are adding stormwater infiltration to the property, 1-inch infiltration and capture. The current property has nothing that's being captured or treated on the property itself. We do comply with the requirements of all the critical infrastructure being above the floodplain. So the floodplain rate is at 16.5 Boston City datum. All critical infrastructure is at 21.5 or above for infrastructure. So we have a very high set of infrastructure. The first floor is at 17.8. So the first floor is above the floodplain, and then utilities are even a higher in the first story elevation. So that way it's not impacted if there was a 100-year storm.
Yeah, no habitable area below grade, right?
Not below 17.8, which is the first floor. Yeah.
Okay. What is the breakdown between how much pervious surface are we losing here?
I think we're talking in the area of, I think around, I'm just trying to double check one area. I think we're talking in around maybe about 500 to 1,000 square feet. I think the lot's a 25 by 70 foot lot, so this is a very small area.
Okay. I'm sorry. Did I understand that the loss of pervious surface could be up to 1,000 square feet on this lot?
That's an estimate. I don't have the numbers right offhand. So I don't have that exact number in hand. So
Okay.
I think it's around that. It's around that area, I believe.
Okay, I'm going to go to the other commissioners for some suggestions here. First, Elena, do you have anything on this?
I didn't have anything on this beyond just a quick note about the conditions, but that's something that we can maybe touch on a little bit later after everyone else has had a chance.
Okay, Commissioner Long?
Yeah, I mean, that, I guess that estimated figure is more than I guess anticipated or would have guessed from this project, thinking about the existing conditions. But I wonder if there's any space for more, potentially compensatory flood storage, or like perhaps Chair Parker was suggesting some green stormwater infrastructure or other options for infiltration that are kind of workable in this site, or whether, Mark, you think that might be feasible at all?
It's challenging from an architectural standpoint to lay out a unit that works well on this tight lot, because we don't have a lot of flexibility where other lots have that. So in regards to changing the floor plan, I guess we could touch base with the architect, but I know we did have some challenges with this already, getting it to kind of lay out on the lot and make it functional.
Could you remind me what's proposed to be on the roof as far as surfacing?
I don't believe there's anything special. So you'd be a typical, I think, rubber roof. Nicholas Tan, the applicant's rep, is on site on the call, and he might be able to give a better answer to the roofing material.
Okay.
It's Nicholas Tan, all one word is his name on the Zoom call.
Looks like he's unmuted.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Nicholas Tan. So I'm sorry, Mark, what exactly the question you were asking me to answer?
What is the material of the roof intended to be? Is it a typical roof of usually it's rubber for flat roofs, or is there something specific? Were you planning on putting anything else up there that might absorb rainfall and runoff, etc.?
Yeah, usually it's a rubber roof, or it's a flat building.
And then,
Building.
sorry, Nick, is there anything, is that draining to the, I believe there was an infiltration basin on site at the 17.5 or 17.8 level. Where's that roof water or runoff going to?
So I think you're talking about, so the infiltration system is a roof capture system that goes to the underground chambers, and then I believe it's an overflow to the street should those chambers be completely filled.
To the street stormwater basin or catch basin, or?
I believe that's the case per the plan. It shows a drain line coming out of the infiltration system once at an invert. So
okay,
there has to be an overflow.
I don't know if it would make sense for this project. I'm not an expert in this, but I know we have gotten, I think, some green roof proposals or creative ideas from other projects. Although, I'm not saying that's something we might require, but just wanted to float that idea that Chair Parker had brought up about green roofs. And maybe it's workable here, and it may have some measurable positive impact as far as stormwater capture or infiltration capacity, or storage capacity rather. But that really wraps up the questions that I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, I have a question about what's below on this project, whatever 17.5, is that what you're using as the sort of drop dead level?
So the existing property on the Boston City datum does change from the back to the front. The back is low, I think around 13. The front is high, around 17.5. Our first floor elevation is at 17.8. The floodplain is at 16.5. And then in critical infrastructure, again, is at 21.5.
So is there anything that's below 17.5?
It would just be a foundation, walls and the infiltration system that's also there.
So there's not parking or storage or
No.
anything that's below that? And the 17.5, is that the current figure? Is that the 2070 figure? What date is associated with that number?
It's the most current data that's being used per the regulations, which requires that we use I forget, I'm sorry, the exact language that your regulations mentioned, but we went through this heavily with the engineers because of that. So the floodplain's at 16.5. I think I thought 19.5 was the potential long-term floodplain, and that's why infrastructure is at 21.5, because we're 2 feet above that. So it requires a sea level rise.
Yeah, and when you say infrastructure, is that utilities? I mean, what are you including in infrastructure?
Anything essential for the living space of the property. So that would be heating, water, cooling, and any other electrical utilities that would be damaged by water.
And how is that? I mean, I take it that the entrance to the building is at 17.5?
17.8.
Okay, and so where in the building is that, are those things located?
They're going to be hung almost from the ceiling of the second floor, or sorry, the first floor. The first floor ceiling they'll basically be hung from that ceiling. So all the utilities are basically going to be halfway up the height of the wall. So when you walk into any utility, it's going to be just as an example, again, I don't know elevation height wise, but it's going to be like above your waist. So like any furnace heating equipment is going to be at your waist or higher. All those electrical stuff is all going to be at your waist or higher. So there's nothing near the ground on that first floor. Everything is up high. So 17.8, 21.5, roughly 3 feet above the floor level is where all the utilities could be at the bottom, and then they go up from there. So they're kind of hung from the ceiling, so that way they're above any type of potential flooding that could go through the first floor.
And is that for the entire building, or are they going to be per unit?
The first floor will have a specific layout of utilities because of that elevation height. The other units on the other floors may have utilities on the floor because they're at the second, third, and fourth floors, so they're not in risk of flooding.
So if I understand what you're saying, that it's only what you've described as the first floor, but as you go up, and you said there were going to be 4 floors, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so as you go up, the other floors each will have its own utilities above the floodplain.
Yes, because they're going to be at like, was it 25 feet and then higher, basically. So they're well above the floodplain.
And just to reemphasize this, just so I'm completely understanding, there is nothing in this, there is no parking associated with these units?
No.
Okay, and there is nothing below the 17.5 or 17.8, whatever number you're using.
Yeah, there's no living space, no utilities. It's basically just the foundation walls.
And is there a reason why you decided not to put some green stuff on the roof?
It wasn't originally brought up by the architect, from my understanding. I'm not sure if there's also impacts to the structural design of the building, because green roofs are heavier. So they do require a structural design that takes into account the weight of the soil and everything that's part of that rain garden bed, and also the water weight that you're also going to be holding up there. So I think it would impact the whole structural design of the building if you put a green roof up there, just because of the weight that you do have to account for.
Okay, and the last question I have has to do with what you said, the runoff goes to the street, which, if are there going to be basins below grade? Is that what you're suggesting? And they may overflow and then they go to the street?
So in part of the building footprint, there's an infiltration system that captures and captures and infiltrates 1 inch of water. If there's an overflow of that, there's a pipe underground that would have that overflow of water go directly to the drainage system that's within the street itself. So there's no surface grates or anything on the street level.
Okay, and I am not John Sullivan, God knows, but you're saying that there would be no runoff that would actually go onto the street. It's going to be connected to Boston Water and Sewer in some way.
Yes, all the roof drains, all the rain from the impervious surfaces on the roof and everything else all go to that system that's captured through the infiltration system and then overflows to the street if it does.
And
Just to interject here, Commissioner Richmond, in the materials, I believe, Mark, you stated that the BWSC had approved the stormwater system that you have.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that, and that was my next question. I'm all finished.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
I don't really have questions. This looks sort of, I'm looking at it visually, and I think I don't see a lot to be done here. I don't know if a white roof would be worth considering. That's not green, but it would be perhaps less heat. But other than that, I don't have any suggestions.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question. Nicholas, any chance of using light materials on the roof?
I'm not sure what do you mean the light materials.
Yeah, so more reflective materials as opposed to a dark surface that absorbs heat. Something that would reflect heat so that it lessens the heat index.
Is it possible we can just use like a light roofing painting material to paint over the rubber?
Yeah, I think that's what they do. It's a special type of paint, but yes, I think given the site limitations, I think we'd like to see that.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay. Okay, Elena, any hands raised from the public?
I don't see any hands raised, and I had a quick note on this. As far as conditions go, we were Mark and I were able to connect offline about the conditions, and my only note on those was that I would recommend keeping in the vegetation management and tree protection conditions. The rest of the conditions which Mark had recommended be removed, I think are fine for this project, but that section I think would make sense to keep in.
Yeah, and from what I'm looking at, I guess the ones that were okay to be removed, they had to deal with projects that would be conducted in other areas, right?
Correct. Yeah, they wouldn't have been applicable to this.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Mark or Nicholas, does that make sense to you? If so, we can issue the order of conditions tonight. Okay. So no one from the public. So what I'll do is entertain a motion to close the hearing and issue the order of conditions.
So moved.
Parker, would be with the special condition about the roof or?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Second.
Okay. Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 4-0. Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061966 and Boston file number 2023-056 from Lucas Environmental LLC on behalf of Vicinity Energy for the proposed installation of an 18-inch steam main from the existing manhole on Boylston Street to the development projects on Brookline Avenue located at Ipswich Street over the Muddy River and Fenway. Resource areas are riverfront area, waterfront area, and inland bank. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
This is Chris Lucas with Lucas Environmental.
Okay, anyone else?
Yes, we have Dan Kennedy with Vicinity Energy. We have James Downing and Robbie Burgess with Howard Stein Hudson, and then we have several other team members present. I can list them all if you'd like.
Okay. Okay, floor is yours.
Great, thank you. For the record, my name is Chris Lucas, professional and certified wetland scientist and registered professional soil scientist with Lucas Environmental. We're here, we have a Mass DEP issued a file number 006-1966 with no comments. I'm going to briefly hand it over to Dan Kennedy with Vicinity to briefly discuss the overall project and the benefits, and then I'll get into a little bit of the details. We'll keep this brief and then open up the Q&A with the board. Thank
Okay,
you.
great.
Dan, it's all yours.
Dan Kennedy, I'm the project manager for Vicinity Energy. So quickly, just want to give some background on who Vicinity is. We are a district energy provider for Boston and Cambridge. We have a few plants, one in Kendall Station and one in Nealon Street in Boston. And what we do is provide steam heating to hospitals, life science labs, and many other commercial buildings in the city of Boston. We have about 23 miles of pipe and infrastructure in the city currently. And one thing Vicinity is trying to do as we move forward, with the current climate and in an effort to reduce carbon emissions, is to electrify our steam system. And how we're doing that is making an investment in an electric boiler. The first one will be installed at our Cambridge plant at Kendall Station. And what that allows us to do is generate steam using renewable energy or electricity and provide that to our customers. This has generated a lot of interest from new developers, specifically in the Fenway neighborhood. IQHQ has signed up to for this steam, which we branded eSteam, which is electrical steam. And this project really is to create a lateral that goes from our existing system to these two new developments. And as a part of that extension, we have to cross the Muddy River on Ipswich Street, and that's what we're here to talk about today. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'll pass it back to Chris and try to keep it brief here. Thank
Great,
you.
thanks, Dan. So quick question for you. I talked to someone in your organization about extending the pipeline to Sullivan Square in Charlestown. So keep that in mind. That would be great. Yeah.
Will do.
Looking forward to hearing about this. Okay, Chris, back to you.
Great, thank you. Go to the next slide, please. Great. So the overall project is proposed along Lansdowne Street, Ipswich Street, and Boylston Street. Lansdowne Street to the left, and it bends over to Ipswich Street and over, as that's shown in green on this plan here. You can flip to the next slide. The area in red is generally our work area within your resources. Again, that green line going through is the overall project, but we're here specifically for the crossing over the Muddy River. The work is proposed immediately north of the Ipswich Street Bridge. It's located on 2 parcels of land currently owned by Mass DOT. They've authorized the project. There's a very small portion in the right-of-way to the city of Boston. This went through a grant of location that's been vetted out by the city for the stream distribution main and all the associated infrastructure. Just north of our work area is the Massachusetts Turnpike Authority Rail and Charles Gate Park, located further north, as well as the Mass Pike. There are condominiums located to the east of the project. Ipswich Street, Boylston Street, and the DCR Charles River Reservation are located to the south. And immediately west is the Charles Gate overpass. Flip to the next slide, please. So again, here, this is an existing conditions plan. It shows Ipswich Street, the Muddy River in the center there. You can see the tracks and the turnpike to the north. The site is not located in any rare species habitat. There are no certified or potential vernal pools. There's no areas of critical environmental concern or outstanding resource waters in the work area, and no Mass DEP wellhead protection zones. The only resource area associated with the project is with the Muddy River. We conducted a delineation in December of 2022 and went back in March of 2023. We formally delineated the bank. You can see the lines south of Ipswich Street. We flagged the bank of the Muddy River, the west and east banks, which are formally delineated. The bank of the river follows the bridge abutments to the Ipswich Street Bridge, as well as the abutments to the tracks, which demarcate the inland bank and the offsets for the riverfront. Obviously, we have land under water bodies and waterways contained within the banks of the river. We also have bordering land subject to flooding in this portion. It's elevation 11.46 Boston City base. That is located, that's that dark line located to either side of our bank lines south of the bridge. We also have the dash lines you can see on either side of the river. The first set of dash lines is the 25-foot riverfront area associated with the state and local ordinance. And then we have the waterfront area, which is another 25 feet offset from that shown here, the second set of dash lines extending outward. And then the furthest dash line is the 100-foot buffer zone to the inland bank. If you can jump us ahead, the next slide, please. This is a photo taken from the south facing the Ipswich Street Bridge. So on the west side of the bank, you can see it's armored with granite block. The bank's generally along the top of that block. The east side is naturally vegetated with trees and some shrubs. It's fairly open, a lot of foot traffic through here. And again, the bank's along the side there, and you can see the abutments to the bridge along the river, which demarcate the bank and the mean high water further up. Next slide, please.
Chris, hold on.
Sure.
So that was taken in March of this year?
Yes.
Isn't this the area where the water goat resides? The boom that's out there? I don't see it in the picture.
Yeah, there actually is the boom. If you look on the west side of the bank, you see that first tree next to the bridge?
Yes.
If you look immediately to the right of that, you can see something in the water. That's the boom.
Oh, I see it now. Okay.
It
And
cuts
is this
across.
where the river goes into a culvert underneath the street or on the other side of the street?
There's a series of abutments you can see in the middle there. So the water flows under there and then under the tracks. I did not have access to go
Yeah,
through.
so there's the Stony Brook culvert, which comes from the Fenway neighborhood, is on the right side. See the bank goes up. Charles Gate East is the street on the right-hand side, and the culvert is buried under there, and it merges with the Muddy River further towards the Charles River.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So this is our work area. Ipswich Street is to the right. There's a series of two pipes. There's a chain link fence and two pipes, and then another chain link fence. Our work area is to the left of that chain link fence and to the right of the rail track. You can see the existing pipe and a timber bridge, which is rotted and falling apart. So this is the portion, basically, this is our work area over the brook, the river. Just wanted to show you a photo of that so everyone's clear what we're looking at here. You know, this is a highly disturbed area. It's adjacent to the tracks, so we have to be limited with the following of the track there. And you know, limited vegetation. There's you know, some shrubbery here. It's mostly tree of heaven, so it's invasive. But that's outside the work area. There's a small little shrub right there. Next, can skip the next slide and go to the following slide, this one. I don't know if you can zoom in on that at all. If you want to zoom in on the top portion there, if you're able to.
Yeah, we can't. Unfortunately, can't zoom in.
So again, this is the construction plan. We have the resource areas. The outer blue line is the 100-foot buffer. Again, the green is the waterfront area, your local waterfront area. The red is the riverfront area. And then we have the floodplain and the bank line shown. Basically, our proposal is to demolish the existing 12-inch main and the timber bridge. All those materials will be removed and disposed of in accordance with all local, state, and federal requirements. And we're proposing a series of mains, which may be a little hard to read on there, but generally it consists over the river. We're proposing an 8-inch above grade pumped condensate pipe and an 18-inch above grade high pressure steam pipe. That's directly over the river. To the east of that, we have a series of pipes. There's a 14-inch high pressure steam pipe, a 12-inch high pressure steam pipe, and a 6-inch pumped condensate. Those are the areas in gray. To the right of the crossing and to the left west side, we have a 6-inch pumped condensate pipe and an 18-inch high pressure steam pipe.
Chris, can I just add that outside of the limits of the Muddy River, everything's underground.
Correct.
That you're discussing. It's just to cross the river that they become visible.
Right. So everything is buried underground, and the entire service will be the service is supposed to be concrete encased steel pipe. The entire span of the project is roughly 3,200 linear feet. Obviously, we're just focused on this section here. There's steam manholes every 300 linear feet along the entire length of the project. All sidewalk and roadway materials that'll be affected by the installation for the underground portions will be replaced in kind. They've provided a detailed traffic management plan for each stage of the work of the project to manage safety and mobility. There's been extensive public outreach through this project, particularly for coordination for several large stakeholders like Fenway Park, MGM Music Hall, and the Parcel 12 Air Rights Development Project. If you can quickly flip back to the previous slide. Okay. Yeah, so this one shows, this is the demolition plan. Along the north, just below the Tex Massachusetts Turnpike, we are proposing a turbidity boom with a floating silk curtain. And then along the remainder of it, they're proposing 2 rows of compost filter tubing along the banks for additional protection. You can flip back to the next slide if you'd like again. Overall, we looked at the local ordinance requirements for climate change. The project itself is increasing steam service throughout the city, which contributes to Vicinity's ability to decarbonize the Boston district energy system. This decarbonizing aligns with the environmental goals set by the Commonwealth and the environmental legislation within the cities of Boston and Cambridge. The site's not located within a future risk area for sea level rise or coastal flooding, and it's not located within a coastal flood resiliency district. The future 2070 storm surge will rise to the elevation of the site, but only during a 100-year event in a nor'easter. However, this project is not proposing any changes to stormwater flows or everything because most of it's underground. We're replacing an existing pipe. So we don't anticipate any impact on flooding with sea level rise projects for the 2070 year. We're not anticipating any contribution to heat island effect. As it is now, there's 1 shrub being removed. That shrub shouldn't be there anyway due to the track. I'm surprised it hasn't been cut already with the active rail there. So we're not anticipating any heat island effect. The entirety of the project's underground except for this portion, and there's literally nowhere to plant trees there. That won't get maintained and cut. We have temporary impacts to inland bank. As you saw in that previous photo, it's all disturbed. We have 15 linear feet of temporary impacts. We fully comply with the performance standards for inland bank. We also fully comply with the performance standards for riverfront under the redevelopment standard. And Alana, just to be clear too, the original form we submitted has the correct calculations, not the revised page. So we have 552 square feet of impacts in your waterfront area. And then we have an additional 380 square feet of impacts in the riverfront area. I just want to clarify that for the order of conditions. So you have that information in the original package. And again, those are temporary impacts to disturbed areas. And if you want to flip to 2 slides ahead, just a question slide. At this point, we believe we fully meet all the requirements of the Wetland Protection Act and your local ordinance. It's a fairly benign project. Erosion controls and measures are in place to prevent any impacts to the Muddy River. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions you have for me or the team. We're here to answer.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So just so I can be clear here, the portion of the work that is above ground, is that above the Muddy River, or is the Muddy River covered it at that point?
It's above the Muddy River. It's open to the river below.
And that's where you're going to be using the boom and the siltration.
We propose the siltration along the banks down gradient of the bridge. And we also have, those are the compost socks. And then the turbidity boom is located north of the rail tracks, just north of the rail tracks.
Okay, got it. Okay. Okay, makes sense. Dan, how much of your portfolio is renewable? Is it 100%?
So the 2 buildings we are serving in the Fenway area are the first 2 customers that will have the renewable piece to the steam. But we're hoping that, it catches on, and we're able to add more electric boilers, and continue to decarbonize.
Fantastic. Okay, good. Eleanor, what do you have on this?
I don't have any questions. I just want to note that we were able to connect offline about the conditions and that those would be ready to go with the exception of any special conditions that might come up during this conversation.
Okay, fantastic. Fisheries didn't comment on this, not necessary, right?
They did not. but we did send them a copy, I believe. Let me just confirm.
Okay,
We did send them a copy, because again, there's no fish run here, but we sent them a copy, just to cover our bases. They did not provide comment.
fantastic. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Long?
Thank you both for the presentation. I think it's the first time I'm hearing about this kind of infrastructure, so definitely learning a few things here. I guess, I have really minimal concerns or questions, but just so I'm clear, so the pipe's exposed basically between the two, like inland bank extents. Is that correct? And then it goes underground once it kind of hits the riverfront area?
Correct. We're basically removing that pipe in that photo, which if you want to flip back to it, it was page. We'll keep going back a few. Picture's worth 1,000 words. So you can
Right.
see the pipe comes out of the bank at the top of the picture and goes back in. Basically, we're doing something similar. That pipe will be removed there, it'll be moved under the underground, and they will replace. So we come out of the bank and go back into the bank in a similar fashion to what's there now.
Got it. I might have missed the demo plans and what you submitted. So the temporary disturbances or temporary impacts will largely be like where the pipe is underground, where you need to access it in those
Correct.
resource areas.
Right. And as you can see, it's disturbed. It's along the edge of a rail. So we're not clear cutting vegetation. Obviously that little shrub right there will go, but like I said, I'm surprised it's actually still there.
So is that in the zone of influence of the train tracks, or?
It would appear to be. I don't know exactly the following area, but in my experience, that any vegetation in that zone is usually cut.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
I'm surprised that's still there.
I don't know if, I guess because it's in the zone of influence, I was going to ask if you guys would be willing to throw down some seed there. Do you think there's any chance of that?
We can ask, but I doubt it. I don't
All
think we're gonna want any vegetation along there. It's all rock now, so.
Looks like track ballast.
Right.
Fair enough. Okay, great. Well, yeah, I think that's basically all the questions I have. Thanks again. Actually, I'm sorry. One thing. Is this something that we typically would want to net for any potential falling debris over the river, Chair Parker? I know that's something you asked with some other bridge work.
Yeah, that was what I was getting at with the with my questioning. And I guess, yeah, why don't you, Chris or Dan, if you could respond to that.
I will, James, Robbie, I don't know if you have any comment on that, how the feasibility of getting a net in there with the constraints. I'll leave that to you to.
I mean, we can try. I know that we talked about it in an earlier meeting. I'm not sure where we landed with it, but we can certainly, if it's feasible, then we can do it.
Yeah, definitely seems like a very constrained site from a lot of
Yeah.
angles. But yeah, I appreciate that discussion, returning to that. But yeah, that actually wraps it up for me. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be great. Maybe we can put something in the order of conditions that if feasible, you'll net the area.
I think that's reasonable.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Richmond,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Herbst,
Nothing from me, thanks.
Elena, anybody from the public?
I do not see any hands raised. I'm also not seeing anything in our inbox.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, this is great. Keep up the good work. I think that's it for my questions. So I guess, and Elena, you said we're all ready with the order of conditions. So I'll call for a motion to close the hearing, issue the order of conditions with the addition of a special condition that the applicant will explore nets underneath the work that's above the Muddy River for the feasibility of installing such a catch net.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So that carries 4-0. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Commissioners.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Before we go on, can anyone hear the jackhammer outside? Is that distracting? Helena, can you hear?
I haven't been able to hear anything.
Okay, good, because it's distracting to me, but okay, as long as I'm not distracting you. Great. They always seem to do this work on Wednesday nights when we have a Concom hearing, closest to where I am. Okay, next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 0061967, Boston file number 2023-057 from the Collins Engineers Inc. on behalf of the Massachusetts Port Authority for the proposed repairs to the existing concrete infrastructure within the enclosed area below the Black Falcon cruise deck located at 1 Black Falcon Avenue in South Boston. Resource areas are 100-foot buffer to bank, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and it's within a designated port area. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Hi, Madeline Sewell, Massport Environmental, and I'm joined also by Chet Myers and Sam Ayas from Capital Programs Department of Massport. And additionally, I'm going to pass it off to Danielle Goudreau with Collins Engineering. And actually, maybe real quick first, Chet, looked like you had something to add.
Yeah. No. I thought they needed to unmute me. That's why I was raising my hand.
Oh,
So,
gotcha.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. So again, my name is Danielle Goodrow from Collins Engineers, representing the applicant today. We do have a file number. It looks like we got that yesterday. The project is located at the cruise port just south of the Marine Industrial Park at 1 Black Falcon Ave. The primary scope of the repairs includes repairs to existing infrastructure elements below the deck. That includes repairs to undermined pier walls, deteriorated beams, and areas on the underside of the deck. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the cruise port, but it was originally constructed in 1918 and has since had various improvements throughout its life. There have been 2 other similar projects completed previously at the terminal, and this is the 3rd phase of the projects. And the work's really just intended to restore the capacity of structural members and keeping the terminal operational. If you could switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. We included these. It's just an aerial, USGS, and FEMA map to help orient you to the site. Again, it's at the cruise port, located adjacent to the reserve channel within Boston Harbor, just south of the Marine Park. If you go to the next slide. We did review sea level rise and resiliency for the project. Above is an excerpt from the Coastal Resilience Solutions for South Boston. You can see our project site is actually located in a less vulnerable location than the surrounding area. It's about 1/3 of a mile from the flood pathway to the north. And again, the scope of repairs includes structural repairs to the infrastructure below the deck, and that's to preserve the design life of the terminal, but it could allow for resilience enhancements and improvements to be considered in the future. I do want to say that Massport does have resiliency and sustainability guidelines along with flood-proofing guidelines that are used on all of their projects as well. If you could go to the next slide, please. This slide just shows another aerial of the site. On the right-hand photo, you can see this is the top side of the terminal. This is looking west. So this is the top side of the deck, and all of the repairs, again, are below the deck here. If you go to the next slide, please. So there are access manholes throughout the top side. You saw one in the last photo. You can see one on the right-hand side here. There's also access to below the deck through these access openings, and those are located along the front of the concrete seawall along the length of the terminal. In the photo on the left, you can see there's a few of those access openings, and behind that leads to the pile supported area. I do have a few more photos after this to show you the layout below the deck. So if you could switch to the next slide, please. This photo on the left here, that's the gallery area, and that runs along the length of the terminal again. In this photo, you're looking west. On the left side of the photo, you have those access openings within the concrete seawall that leads out to the water. And on the right are the bays with all of the structural members that support the deck above. The photo on the right shows a typical bay, which has the concrete pier walls on the left and right. And those are supported by timber piles beneath the soil and concrete beams that run left to right that support the concrete deck. If you could go to the next photo, please. These next few slides just give you an example of the repairs that are proposed. These photos show the end of a pier wall that's deteriorated and spalled on the left, and placement of new concrete on the right to fix that deterioration. And that's really just the basic concept for the majority of these repairs is just replacing deteriorated areas with new concrete. If you go to the next slide, please. So these photos here, actually, can you go to the previous slide? I think it might have skipped one. There we go. So these photos here give an example of the repairs that are proposed. Again, you can see on the left is another pier wall. And in this case, the bottom is undermined, which exposes the timber piles beneath. And on the right-hand side, you can see that new concrete is placed to encapsulate the undermined area there. The photo in the center just shows you the timber piles below those concrete pier walls that support the pier walls. And then the next slide, please. These photos show typical beam repairs. And again, this is just deteriorated concrete and it's replaced with new concrete. Or we also have a repair that's fiberglass reinforced wrap, and that is just wrapped around the existing beam to restore the capacity. If you go to the next slide, please. Again, more deteriorated concrete. This is showing the underdeck area. You can see a spall on the left-hand side. So the concrete's essentially just falling off and you have deteriorated steel reinforcing. And then on the right-hand side, new concrete is placed to fix that defect. Can you go to the next slide, please? So for wetland impacts, this project is located within a designated port area, but there are no impacts to land under ocean because, again, all of the repairs are below deck. The placement of concrete totals approximately 24,000 square feet of land subject to coastal storm flowage. But because this area is all below deck, it's previously impacted and it really does not have any impact on the floodplain. I do also want to note that we did hear back from the Division of Marine Fisheries, who don't have any concerns about the project, but commented that debris should be removed and the area stabilized, which we intend on doing regardless. And that's really the scope of repairs. It's pretty simple. It's remove the old concrete, place new concrete, and it's the same thing over and over again throughout the entire length of that terminal there. And that totals approximately, again, 24,000 square feet, land subject to coastal storm flowage. And that's really all I have. The last slide is just a thank you, and I will leave it open to questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't know about anybody else, but looking at those photographs was making me feel anxious for the person taking them. That feels a little dangerous in there.
There are safety precautions that are put in place, I assure you. We use a tripod to access. It is a confined space, so monitors are used to monitor the air quality, and tripods are used to retrieve anyone that's down there in case anything happens.
Oh boy. Okay, thank you. And to make matters worse, now we're having the fire alarm. The annunciator is going off now. So hopefully you can't hear that either.
We can't.
Nope.
Okay, good. Jeez. Okay, I don't have any questions on this. Elena, do you have anything?
Nothing other than my conditions update, which is that we have we've agreed we've agreed to the conditions offline, so those are set again with the exception of any additional ones that might come up during the hearing tonight.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Long?
Thanks for the presentation. I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Richmond?
I don't have any questions either. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Herbst?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Okay, Elena, do we have any hands up from the public?
I do not see any hands, and I see nothing in our inbox.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing and issue the order of conditions.
So moved.
We have a second. Yep, I heard that. Okay, Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is notice of intent for DEP file number unassigned, Boston file number unassigned from the Vertex Companies LLC on behalf of the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation for the proposed construction of a new pavilion and the removal, replacement of self-contained toilets located on George's Island in Boston. Resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Raul Silva is here from DCR and Andy Street from Vertex, who'll go through the presentation.
Great. Good to see you, Raul.
Likewise.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, Andy Street with the Vertex Companies, just here with Raul on behalf of the DCR. So if I could go to the next slide. This just to give kind of the big picture. This is George's Island in the off the coast of the city here. About 53 acres in all. Fairly popular island. It's got Fort Warren on it. There's pathways that lead to the site amenities, open spaces for gathering, the beaches. There's a pier for access. Fairly popular, fairly well built out island that we're talking about here. And the project, and I'll get into it more, but the project is to kind of increase those amenities, increase those opportunities, add a new pavilion with a concrete pad, and some of the toilets. These are self-contained toilets that are on many of the islands out in the harbor. Remove some of those and add one to go with that pavilion. So if I could go to the next slide, please. Just to kind of walk through, I just talked about the site a little bit, but there'll be a slide about resource areas. I'll get into the work more and then access too, because, you know, with it being an island, there are certain access challenges for equipment, materials, all of that kind of good stuff. So again, if you go to the next slide. So this, I talked briefly, kind of high level overview, and just to kind of build off that, the two pictures on the right, the top right corner of this slide, those are the self-contained toilets that I mentioned briefly. They're, you know, above ground, they have the small roof and doorway and access to them. In this case, they come off of a paved walkway there. Underground, there's a large tank that collects the waste from their use, and those get pumped out and it gets taken off the island and disposed of properly. So those are the types of units that we're talking about here. As I mentioned, these are fairly commonplace on a number of these islands. The bottom right corner is that's a picture looking obviously across a lawn towards the water, and kind of between those mounds, kind of in the background, that little concrete area sticking out into the grassed area. That's the area we'll be targeting for this pavilion site. So it's a grassed area already. You know, it's not paved at the moment, but certainly disturbed. It's a maintained lawn out there that's directly adjacent to a paved walkway. So if you go to the next slide, please. The island as a whole, again, being surrounded by water, there's several resource areas in play here. The outer limits, obviously there's open water there, but when you get into that pinkish color, we're talking about coastal beach. We've got 100 feet from that coastal beach there. There's a wetlands on that. This is all Mass GIS. This is record information, but we have a wetland buffer zone. And then when we talk about flooding with land subject to coastal storm flowage, we've got that blue kind of tightly slashed area there. That's your FEMA zone AE. And then there's also that zone VE on portions of this island as well. You can see the work zones are highlighted. There's in the bottom right corner is where that pavilion will go, and kind of the top left is where the some of the toilets will be removed. Those are both only in the zone AE. So despite the number of resource areas that are present on this island, that is the one resource that will be impacted by this project. So again, if you go to the next slide, please. So this highlights those work locations a little bit more here. So in the top of the slide there, in the flood zone, the land subject to coastal storm flowage, there are 3 toilets that will be removed. The plan is to clean them out, vacuum them out, get rid of the waste off the island. demolish the toilet and take out the tank, and then backfill with clean material and landscape those areas with some grass. They're in some grass areas already. Similarly, the same operation down on the bottom there where we're proposing to remove 3 more toilets. Same operation, the tanks get sucked out, the structures get taken down, the tank gets pulled out, backfilled with clean material, and then returned to a landscape condition. Down in the bottom right there, where it's called out the new pavilion and toilet, there'll be it's 40 by 84 foot concrete pad that will support a new pavilion at that location. There previously was a pavilion up near the top 3 toilets. There was a location for a pavilion. This was more of a gravel base. It wasn't as formal as what we're proposing here. That got some use, but the idea here is to build a permanent structure. It's right near some other outdoor areas where people gather. It's right off that walkway close to the water, has a nice view to it, and the idea, increase the usage and the possibilities of this island to the visitors. So that pad goes, there's a wooden structure that goes up above it that will provide cover, and right adjacent to that new structure would be one of those self-contained toilets. So again, all of this taking place within, the removal of the 3 on the top of the page, and the pavilion site itself located in land subject to coastal storm flowage. So as part of the design, despite this being tidally influenced flooding, we're maintaining existing grades for that pavilion. So there's no additional filling going on there. From a stormwater management perspective, the pavilion site will be surrounded with a stone trench. So any runoff will be directed from the pad and the roof into that stone trench to try and promote some infiltration, treat any kind of debris. I mean, it's not going to be accessed by vehicles, so we're not necessarily concerned about oils and things like that, but water will run off into that stone trench for some treatment, and then ultimately into the ground. And again, it's got that paved walkway access. A small walkway will be added to connect that pavilion to the existing paved area there. So next slide, please. And just regarding site access, there is an existing pier, as I mentioned, that's used for both visitors and for DCR to maintain these properties in a number of different ways. That will be used by a contractor here. The contract documents will specify rubber-tired vehicles to try and limit additional disturbance to any sort of area. But the intent is they come onto a dock. They're not going to be using the beach. Should they need to use the beach for one reason or another, or that option comes up, beach protection would certainly be provided. This is fairly common with a number of these DCR projects that take place in these islands. But the intent is that the dock and the pier is used to get equipment, materials, all of that onto the island to minimize any disturbance to the beach and those resource areas that surround the edges of the island. There's a stockpile area that it will be located outside of any jurisdictional resource area. You will likely get disturbed just from stockpiling. That will be restored as well, but it will be intentionally outside of jurisdictional areas there. And I think, what else am I missing about that? I think that that's and again, access is along paved walkways that exist today. So there shouldn't be any disturbance getting vehicles from that pier to the construction site. I should back up a little bit. I glossed over one of my notes, but just so the commission's aware, there was an archaeological exploration here. We brought in a subconsultant to do that, to investigate the potential areas of this work, and nothing of sensitivity was discovered here. And also the design of these, particularly in that land subject to coastal storm flowage, we had a full survey done to make sure we understand the elevations and how these new this work would affect those things. So I think, again, if you go to the last slide, I believe trying to keep it short and sweet before we open back up to the commission for questions. But here, this slide shows it better, but that staging area is located in that kind of dark triangle shaped area there. You can see it's kind of centrally located on the island and outside of any jurisdictional area there. So, the project results in some minor disturbance within that land subject to coastal storm flowage. Again, this is kind of a public good type project trying to enhance this island while trying to minimize the disruption and also provide some things for stormwater management and treatment for that new impervious surface that we're showing in the on the south side there with the pavilion. Raul, did you have anything to add that I might have missed?
Just one comment. It's a DCR project. Very proud of the work that we're doing, but we are partnering with Boston Harbor Now, and we are using as a funding source CPA funds through the city. So those have been leveraged from Boston Harbor Now, who are actually purchasing the pavilion, and then we are doing the site prep and doing the assembly. So it's been very much a close collaboration between us and the city and Boston Harbor Now. Make one last comment. The pavilion that we are replacing, that was in a different location, was a temporary pavilion that was erected and destroyed by weather twice in the last 12 years. So our hope is this is a better location, obviously a more secure and stable construction, more permanent, but we expect it to be very, very heavily used. So that's it. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Commission.
Great, thank you very much. So glad to hear. I remember that grant last year. I'm so pleased to see the money going out so fast and going to good use here. Okay, as far as questions, just a quick question on the archaeological resources here. Is this the smallpox cemetery island or Native American artifacts?
It is Native American artifacts, no smallpox that I'm aware of, but we had two sites that Andy described. We had a full archaeological investigation. We discovered an old blacksmith shop, and that was the site that we are obviously not building a pavilion on, but we are hoping to add an interpretive panel and have that, former use sort of recognized. And I get a kick out of the number of horses that, 100+ years ago inhabited these islands. So obviously, if you have that many horses, you need a blacksmith shop. So it's sort of an added benefit, those archaeological digs of two locations.
Wow, that is very interesting. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Elena, do you have anything on this?
I don't. With the exception of just two sort of logistical notes, the conditions are ready to go, but as we've noted during the hearing, there hasn't been a DEP file number assigned and also has not had a Boston file number assigned. So just flagging that.
Okay. And Raul, I hope you'll use your connections within the state to get that number so we can, we'll have to continue it without the number, but next hearing, you don't need to bring the whole team. We don't need a presentation, but hopefully you'll have a number for us.
Absolutely. I apologize. If I had known, I would have rattled some cages. I will do that tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Long?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Andy and Raul. Used to come here all the time as a kid, so glad to see this happening. Hopefully you can do something about the ghost problem on the island, but that's about it for me.
I think as the engineer, I won't hazard an opinion. We may sell some tickets if that continues. Looking at the revenue source that our neighbor in Salem to the north bring in for Halloween, but I think if we could monetize it, use some of those funds for staff, we might go in that direction.
Not a bad idea.
Halloween on George's.
You got it.
Commissioner Richmond?
I don't have any questions. I think it's a great project. Good luck.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
Same, nothing from me.
Okay. Okay. So with that, Elena, anybody from the public raise their hand?
Nope, nobody from the public. Nobody in the inbox and no ghosts either.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Okay, someone's gonna have to figure that out. Okay, Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so that carries 4-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a request for a determination of applicability from Jacobs on behalf of the Massachusetts Port Authority for the installation of traffic cameras at 9 intersections within existing roadways and/or sidewalks located in the Seaport District in Boston. Who's here on behalf of the applicant?
Hello, Madeline Sewell again. Oh, sorry, Greg. Just here on behalf of Massport, environmental manager, also joined by Chet, and now I will pass it over to Greg.
Thank you, Madeline.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Greg Corello with Jacobs Engineering. I'm here with two of my colleagues, Craig Wood and Lauren Manzo as well. And we'll run through this Massport project.
Thank you.
Next slide. All right, so the project is the installation of traffic cameras and associated equipment at 9 intersections in the Seaport District. The intent of the project is to increase safety in the area, allowing the correct emergency personnel and equipment to be deployed, resulting in improved response times to emergencies such as vehicle incidents and flooding from coastal storm events. For this project, all proposed utility trenching to support the traffic cameras will occur within the existing roadways and sidewalks. One of the main goals of the project was to maximize the use of existing infrastructure, minimizing any kind of environmental impacts and impacts to vehicle traffic. With that, the photo here on the front shows one of the typical traffic signal poles that you'll find at these intersections that we'll be using to install these traffic cameras on. Next slide. So we're in Seaport District in Boston. Right there is the locust map showing the area. Next slide. So this slide gives a good overview of the project area and of the individual intersections. Like I said, we are going to 9 intersections here. Where we could, we used the existing traffic signal poles at the intersections. If there was no traffic signal pole, there's existing light poles that we used. And the only intersection that falls outside of that is intersection 1 there, which is that traffic circle over on the right-hand side. That doesn't have a light pole or traffic signal pole currently. We'll be installing a small standard MassDOT traffic pole there. It's like a light pole, about 12 feet tall, that will be made to blend in with the other light poles and hold the traffic camera. The good part about this slide, it shows the different resource areas, being the 100-foot buffer zone, as well as the land subject to coastal storm flowage. Sorry about that. And how the intersections sit within them. So as we go through each one, we'll be walking through each intersection and you'll kind of see where they play. It does start at the top there, going right to left, intersection 1 through 6. And then the last 3 intersections, 7, 8, and 9, are actually outside of those resource areas. Next slide, please. So this is intersection 1 at that traffic circle. The orange circle there at the top shows the proposed camera location. The gray area is the proposed trenching. These trenches are just the typical 3x3 utility trench. What we show is wider than that, and that's because we're repaving the top 1.5 inches of roadway to blend it into the existing roadway, prevent any kind of kind of key it in and continue the pavement as it is. The intent of it is to not affect any existing grades, put everything back the way it was, use the same type of pavers and materials in the sidewalk, and just come in and put the utility conduit underground to get to these last runs for the cameras. What you'll see on future slides is that there's a lot of locations where we are just utilizing the existing underground conduit system, and we did try to do that to the maximum capability that we could. There was just some of the last final runs to the proposed poles where we have to kind of complete that utility run. The one thing you will notice on this slide that is different than the future slides is we are looking at a closer manhole to see if we can tie into that instead. That's the red dotted line there. You won't typically see that on the other slides. It's just something we're working on. But the gray is the proposed trench as is in the design right now. Next slide. This is intersection 2 here, Congress Street at Northern Ave. Over on the left, you have that proposed traffic camera on the existing light pole, and the manhole, and 2 there is the existing manhole that we're going to. The reason you see the longer gray area here is, again, that trench going to the right goes to intersection 1. That was the manhole we were trying to access, whereas the trench going to the left goes to the other cameras at the top of the screen. The cable does get to that manhole N2 via existing conduit that we'll be utilizing. And then again, the red shows the currently working through, seeing if we can shorten that trench area. Next slide, please. And at intersection 3, we're at Harbor View Lane and Northern Ave. This is that continuation of the trench from the previous slide, going to that existing light pole where the camera is proposed to be installed. Next slide, please. Intersection 4 here, 4A, because it is D Street, where D Street hits Northern Ave. Right now we're looking at the D Street south side, and the next slide you'll see the other D Street that comes in. On all these slides, I should have pointed out, we do point out the limit of the 100-foot buffer. So you can see that line as you go across. This particular camera has existing conduit that we can use to, this existing traffic pole has existing conduit we can use to run the cable through to the traffic camera that's proposed. So that's why you don't see any trenching on this slide for this intersection. Next slide, please. Here is that adjacent D Street intersection with Northern Ave, right outside the Boston Fish Pier. We're tying into the existing manhole N1 there and going to the proposed traffic signal pole at the top left hand side of the screen. And then that trench that goes to the right goes to the existing manhole that we can use to get into the conduit to go to the traffic camera we just looked at. Next slide, please. Intersection 5 here, we have Seaport Lane at Seaport Boulevard. You can see the harbor up there at the top. The one thing I should have mentioned is we are not impacting the harbor. We're not going into the water with any of the construction. We do have erosion control in there as far as catch basin inlet protection, and to make sure any kind of runoff during the construction activities doesn't impact the harbor. With that said, the smaller area of the gray that you'll see on these sheets are the smaller trenching, the 3-foot wide utility trench that goes into the sidewalk. It doesn't need the repaving that we do throughout the where the roadway is. Next slide, please. So intersection 7 here, this is down at D Street and Congress Street. This one was that first one outside of the coastal storm area. And we have one traffic camera proposed at each corner of the intersection, it being a larger intersection there, and we go from the manhole in the middle to both of those. We do specifically try to avoid any of the trees. We're obviously staying within the roadway and the sidewalks, and not impacting vegetation in this project. Next slide, please. Intersection 8, this is B Street at Congress Street. The manhole we're tying into is just off the screen to the right. It is shown in the RDA application that we sent in. It's just to zoom in, it's just off the screen here, but essentially the trench carries it over to the 2 proposed traffic camera locations at this also larger intersection. Next slide, please. And then intersection 9, our last intersection here. We have 2 proposed cameras on the existing traffic poles as well, tying into that manhole C7. Next slide, please. And then we added the detail slide in here of what the communication trench looks like there on the left. It is a typical 3.5-foot wide by 3-foot deep utility trench with the concrete encased conduit that'll carry the communications and electrical to these cameras. And then the top there, see note 1, is the mill and pave to tie the pavement in, just that top layer to the other pavement in the area. The detail in the middle shows an existing traffic pole and where our traffic camera would be mounted, about 10 feet off the ground level, just like other standard traffic cameras. And then on the right, we have the couple intersections that have the existing light poles where it's mounted in the exact same way. It's just you don't have the mast arm from the signal going across. Instead, you have the light at the top. With that, I think that's the last slide. If you go one more, I think it's just questions after that.
Great. Okay, thank you for the comprehensive presentation. I guess a couple things. One is, and I should have known this beforehand, and it occurred to me during the presentation, Massport apparently owns the roadways. Is that right, Madeline? You own the roadways in the seaport? What about the other land? Is that all like ground lease to the properties around there?
That's correct. We own the roadways. We own all of the land, and our tenants have ground leases. So we don't necessarily own the buildings in some cases, but we do own the land.
Yep. Okay. Wow. That is a big detail that I never realized. Thank you. Okay. Hopefully these traffic cameras aren't to nab speeders.
No, they.
In fact, Massport doesn't really issue speeding citations that I know of within the Seaport District. Not that we necessarily want that to really get out, but it's not typically our primary function of the port police anyway. I'm sure the state police sometimes does, but you don't see it that often.
That's so interesting. So the jurisdiction over there is Massport and state police, I guess, concurrent with BPD. Wow. Okay.
It's not actually concurrent with BPD. On Massport state property, the state police and Massport Port Police have jurisdiction. So we have to work out those boundaries with the city of Boston as to who has jurisdiction where.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
To be clear, we do share data between city of Boston and the state police and the port police.
Okay. Yeah. Not to belabor this, but I live in the Navy Yard. We have the same issue. So we've had, like, when the Metropolitan Police were still around, we had like 4 police departments that could respond to anything, and it was always confusing who to call. Okay. Sorry about that transgression. Elena, do you have anything on this?
I do not have anything on this other than the normal reminder of conditions to be voted on before closing out the hearing if the commission so chooses.
Yeah, I think we'd be looking for the standard erosion conditions because at least a few of those intersections, and I think Greg had already mentioned that you'll be having erosion controls installed. I can't think of any others, but if any of the other commissioners have any, please feel free. So Commissioner Long?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Richmond?
There's nothing for me, and I take it that this is a negative determination of applicability.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Commissioner Herbst?
No questions.
Okay. Elena, do we have anybody who has raised their hand to comment?
I do not see any raised hands or anything in the inbox. I will actually note, we'd received a question fairly early on about the project, but Chair Parker, you actually raised it, which was the traffic question and the speeding violation question. So
really?
Well, yes. So, everything's been covered, it seems.
So I guess that's top of mind for everyone. Okay. Okay. Good. So with that, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing and issue a negative determination of applicability with the standard erosion controls measures or conditions.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that carries 4-0. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item is request for an extension to the original order of conditions for DEP file number 0061688 from WS Development for the construction of 2 buildings and the underground parking garage located at 400 Summer Street in South Boston. Elena, do we have a presentation or are you going to handle this?
I don't think we have a presentation, but I do think that someone from the team might be here to speak about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you for your time tonight. I'm Ali Ribeiro. I'm a Director of Development with WS Development, the owner of the parcel. And I'm happy to give a quick overview of the project if that's helpful.
I think your materials were pretty clear. I mean, if you want to give like a 1 minute, 2 minute summary here, please
Sure.
feel free.
Okay, yeah, it's a multi-parcel, multi-building parcel, excuse me. So a 525 space below ground garage and then 2 towers up above. We are constructing it in phases. So the garage and the first tower, known as 400 Summer Street, are nearing completion and should be complete before the end of this year. And then the second tower will be built as a second phase. That project has been somewhat delayed due to current economic conditions in the lab and office leasing market, as well as the ability to secure financing. But because of the way the project was phased, we did build out the full stormwater storage component for both towers already. So that is operational and will be fully functional come completion of the building. And we are seeking a 3-year extension of the order of conditions. We will be looking for a partial certificate of compliance in the coming weeks as we approach substantial completion for the first phase, and then would look to maintain the order of conditions for the second phase until that is complete.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I don't have any questions. Elena, do you have anything on this?
I do not have anything on this. Thank you.
Commissioner Long?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Richmond?
Nothing from me either, thank you.
Commissioner Herbst?
No concerns, thanks.
Okay. Elena, do we have anybody from the public raise their hand?
I don't see any raised hands and nothing in the inbox either.
Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to extend the order of conditions for a term of 3 years for DEP file number 00617. No, I'm sorry, I turned the page too quickly. And I crossed it all out. Okay, for DEP file number 0061688.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Long?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so that carries 4-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Next item on the agenda is request for an extension for the original order of conditions for DEP file number 0061760 from the University of Massachusetts at Boston for the proposed installation of scientific monitoring equipment and research station located on Rainsford Island in Boston Harbor. Is there anybody here to present, Eleanor, or are you handling this?
I believe there might be someone to present.
Okay.
Leslie Field with the Woods Hole Group.
Great. Floor is all yours.
All right, thank you. So yes, this is a project for the Stone Living Lab and UMass Boston to install monitoring instrumentation on Rainsford Island. They are using the island as a research base to evaluate and research living shoreline approaches for building resiliency. And so the monitoring instrumentation is just needed to measure coastal processes, waves, winds, tides, currents, things like that, so that they can, assess the viability of the resiliency alternatives. So the order of conditions is set to expire in December of this year, and we're requesting a 3-year extension.
Okay, fantastic. I was talking to one of your colleagues probably a month or so ago about the living shoreline work that you're doing.
Yeah.
I don't think it sounds great, frankly, and thank you for all the work that you're doing there. It did occur to me that some night when we have a short agenda, it would be great to hear from someone if they had 10 or 15 minutes just to give us an update on what's going on out there, because it's very important work that I think we'd all like to know a little bit more about.
Absolutely. I can pass that request on to the team.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Elena, do you have anything on this?
I do not.
Okay. Commissioner Long?
Nothing aside from, thank you for doing this work, and, looks like a great project.
Commissioner
you.
Richard,
I don't have anything either. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Herbst.
Nothing for me. I'll be glad to hear an update when the time comes.
Great. Elena, anybody from the public?
No hands raised and nothing in our inbox either.
Okay, fantastic. So with that, I would entertain a motion to extend the original order of conditions for DEP file number 0061760 for an additional 3 years.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
second. Thank you.
Second.
Yep, got it. Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 4-0. Okay, thank you, Leslie.
All right, thank you.
Okay, there have been a number of continuances, continued notice of intent for DEP file number 0061704 and Boston file number 2020-007, DEP file number 0061772 and Boston file number 2021-010, DEP file number 0061961 and Boston file number 2023-051. Okay, now we will begin our regular meeting. Next item on the agenda are administrative updates.
Hello. So yes, as far as administrative updates go, nothing too major other than just our team, as you know, is now rounded out, which is really exciting. So we're just getting into the swing of things with having 3 people on board, which is great. We've also been conducting some site visits to look into some reports of dumping, and we don't have a particular update on any of those, but we were able to conduct those site visits yesterday and are now sorting out what our next steps will be to address them adequately. And that would be the end of our administrative updates, unless the commission has any questions.
Okay, any questions from the commissioners? No? Okay.
Oh, and I guess something to look out for is that staff is also starting to put together the schedule of filing deadlines and hearings for next year. So that's something that we're hoping to have ready to show the commission before the end of the month. Well, actually, oh, sorry. It'll be November when we have our next hearing. So never mind, the beginning of next month, we'll have that prepared for you.
Great. And I think we talked about something, one of the hearings falls on July 5th or something like it did this year, or some.
There's one hearing that falls on a holiday. So we're also going to try to sort of work around that a little bit.
Okay, yeah, because the July 5th meeting didn't work.
It did not.
Great. Okay, thank you. Last item on the agenda is acceptance of meeting minutes, and I did review July 19th. I think that's it, right, Elena?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I am looking for a motion to accept the meeting minutes from July 19th, 2023.
So moved.
Thank you. We have a second. Commissioner Long,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. That carries 4-0. Okay, so with that, I would accept the motion to adjourn by acclamation. Thank you, Dee Dee, Elena, Christopher. Nice to see everyone, and we'll see you. Hopefully, is it 3 weeks? Do we get an extra week?
I want to say we don't. So, we'll
Nice
see.
try, but no.
Still in 14 days. Hopefully, the jackhammer is stopped by then.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a great evening. Bye,
Good night.
everyone.
Bye.